Alright guys, welcome back to another tutorial. This time we're going to go over cells, prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Okay, so this is the fifth tutorial I think of the second unit, second to last thing, and we're just going to be covering basically these two things throughout the entirety. I don't know if this tutorial will take very long, so I'm going to go ahead and just split this paper into two sides. So we're going to put and I guess I'll write them out the first time, prokaryotes in the left side, and we're going to put eukaryotes in the right side. Alright, eukaryotes. Put a line. There we go. Alright, so I'm on page 5. Page 4 gives you a really weird intro. Page 3 gives you a weird intro, and page 4 has some kind of exercise for you. It's probably very useful. I'm just going to go ahead and go into the lecture. So we've got these two kinds of cells, prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. And pro means before something. Okay, so this is like the prototype. So this is the before the karyotes. So karyotes are from the word karyo, I believe, and it just means like it's like a seed essentially. All right, so this is essentially like these are the earlier seeds. So prokaryotes are like prototypes. Okay, so these are the earlier types of cells, earlier cells. So these are like the kind that you would think that existed way back when the Earth was first created and all that jazz. Eukaryotes are a little bit different. This actually comes from a word in Greek. It just means true or real. So this is like the real, and then again the karyotes are the like seeds. So eukaryotes are the newer ones. They're the true ones according to our wording. So like it's kind of got a weird connotation to it. But the idea is these are old, these are new. All right, old, new, old, new. All right. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about what this means. So this eukaryote, this true thing, means it has a true nucleus. So it has a true nucleus. And you know what? I'm gonna actually do these in different colors because I feel like it. So we're gonna go with like here's that weird orange again, and I've got a green highlighter. So we're gonna go with these two colors today. Prokaryotes are gonna be orange. Eukaryotes are gonna be green. Yeah, those show up pretty well, so this will work out. So I apologize if the top of this isn't going to be as cool as the bottom. But anyway, so eukaryotes absolutely have a true nucleus. So this is a big deal, all right? You're going to see certain words associated with this. So you're going to see words like membrane bound. Membrane bound. And all that means is that the nucleus is in that ball. So you guys have seen these pictures where they have a cell. It's normally like open like this. Something like that, and it's got all sorts of stuff in it, right? All sorts. But then over here, it has like a nucleus with a nucleolus and all that jazz. So that brain of the cell, it has membrane-bound organelles. So all the organelles are pretty well defined. So that's another word you can see. They are well defined. Okay, so membrane-bound organelles / nucleus, and they are well defined. On the other hand, prokaryotes, they have a nucleus. Okay, so they have a poorly defined nucleus. Alright, so what they have is poorly defined nucleus. They do have that whole brain structure, but the problem is that it's not as circular as this. So this one you can see is clearly a circle. It's got that circle around it, but in this one it would look more like this. So let's go with the same drawing. Now keep in mind they don't actually look the same, but I'm going to draw something like this. So here's its nucleus. So it's just a bunch of like little dots and strands sort of in the middle here. So we have other things, we have like our whatever and this thing, I don't know. So we have stuff and all, but our nucleus isn't actually defined inside of its own little compartment. Okay, so that is the major difference between this one and this one. Let's see. We're going to go ahead and move on. By the way, prokaryote, well, they'll probably mention this, so I'm going to go ahead and move on for now. Let's take a look at page 6. Page 6 is talking about distinguishing them, and that's going to be your major job here, okay? So remember, I already labeled out these words, membrane-bound organelles, well-defined. This one's poorly defined. It does not have membrane-bound organelles. Prokaryotes they're really tough, all right? They live through a lot of stuff, a lot. And what I mean by that is they do really well at high and low temperatures. So like you can think of eukaryotes, humans, we're made of eukaryote cells. So like human beings, if you put us in the really cold, really hot, we kind of burn up or we kind of freeze. Like we don't do too well there. But prokaryotes, on the other hand, are really, really hardy. Like they just kind of survive. If you think about the deep sea vents way, way down low, where the pressure is ridiculous, or in the bottoms of volcanoes, you have some prokaryotes living in there. Like these things are just alive for whatever reason. They don't do a whole lot, but they are alive. Okay. And then these reproduce really fast. So like these reproduce super fast. Uh, Eukaryotes are less so. They can reproduce fairly fast. So like you can still have hundreds of eukaryotes over a couple hours. So like that's still really fast. You could probably, split one eukaryote into like 10 or 20 in a couple minutes and that kind of thing. But prokaryotes, you can take one prokaryote and you can make 10 or 20 of them in a couple seconds. All right. So these are far faster than these at reproducing. Uh, they're also smaller. So these guys are smaller as a general whole. Alright, so these are smaller, these are larger. Alright? And this kind of makes sense because I told you eukaryotes have membrane-bound organelles. Keep in mind, because of this, because they're separate organelles, they have to have their own spaces for everything. That means that these cells are naturally a little bit bigger than these are because you just have less stuff to fit in a prokaryote. Let's see. Cool, so we're going to move on to page 7 now. And here's another activity. I'm going to go ahead and skip it for now. You guys can take a look at that activity on page 7. I'm going to move on to page 8. By the way, the one thing they do have in common, so I'm going to use like blue for what they have in common while my page loads. They have ribosomes in common. So just keep this in mind. The one thing they have completely in common are ribosomes, and technically a nucleus, but it's not well defined. So like the one thing they have exactly the same thing of is ribosomes. It's just that prokaryotes are, the ribosomes are probably a little smaller. So everything in prokaryotes a little smaller, but the ribosomes work exactly the same way as they do in a eukaryotic cell. All right, so ribosomes is what both of them have. All right, page 8 still has some more activities. I'm going to go to page 9. All right. So it talks about what they have in common. So I should have done this in a Venn diagram format, but that's okay. I'm going to use a separate page that says both. Alright, so I'm going to call this page the both page. Alright, and on this both page, I'm going to use my blue marker again. I think this is the same color blue. But they both have ribosomes. Alright, ribosomes. They both have DNA of some sort. So like not all prokaryotes have DNA. Some of them have RNA, but the point is they both have genetic material. All right. Uh, they both have a plasma membrane. So basically, while eukaryotes have membrane-bound organelles, so like all the stuff inside of it is separated into bags, the whole thing is still in a bag. So if you think about it, this is kind of like having this is kind of like having a box with a bunch of things in plastic bags in it. This is like having a box and you just throw all the crap in there. Alright? So that is kind of the difference between these two, but they are still both enclosed from the outside world. Alright? They both have a cytoskeleton, but I'm not going to worry about all that. So like these are generally what they have in common. They have ribosomes, DNA, plasma membrane. They are generally related. All right, let's talk about some of the differences in these things. And it gives you a wonderful table on page 10, which will do pretty much what I'm doing here, but in a neat little table. But you guys can just catch it here if you need. So remember, these are simpler. These are complex. So let's go ahead. These are simple. All right, so let's get this on screen. Simple. These are not. Alright, these are clearly complex cells. There are a lot more things in them. So like I said, these are organized little baggies inside of a larger box. This one's just a box of stuff. Alright. This one is well defined. This one has, no nucleus, but it has like this weird thing. They're gonna call it a nucleoid. It's all those dots, okay? So that little cluster of dots, all that DNA that just happens to be clustered there, that's what they're gonna call a nucleoid. They don't actually give it a nucleus, okay? So that's not what it's called. All right, and then we talked about the membrane-bound organelles. This is actually pretty straightforward. Cool. And then they're going to give you a couple more similarities and differences. Uh, Prokaryotes, by the way, are asexual. So they split themselves up. This is basically you have one cell, it's going to split and clone itself into two. So one cell becomes two, and they're going to be exactly the same. On the other hand, eukaryotes, oh, that's the wrong marker. Eukaryotes are going to be sexual or asexual. The idea is this. Some of our cells, like our skin cells, they're all exactly the same. So like they just split one into two exactly the same cells. That's asexual reproduction, just like prokaryotes. But others of our cells are bisexual cells. So like our sex cells, our X and Y chromosomes that we will talk about in Unit 4, I want to say. Whenever we go over genetics, your X and Y chromosomes are going to be very different. They are going to be sexual reproduction in that they aren't necessarily the same. They're a mix of the two parent cells. All right, but it takes two cells to do sexual reproduction. It only takes one to do asexual. All right, so let's talk about. Let's see. Okay, so prokaryotes, by the way, and I'm going to highlight this in a different color just so you guys can see this really, really well. One thing I want you guys to remember of prokaryotes is these are generally going to be like lower level bacteria. So simple bacterias and viruses. So this is a big deal. All viruses are definitely prokaryotes. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, I'm going to get another color. It's going to be purple-ish again. Eukaryotes are going to be things like, skin cells. Yeast is a popular one. People use it in cooking. I used it for one of the demonstrations I did back during my seminar. So skin cells, yeast, I don't know, plant cells, pretty much all the things you're used to. These are all going to be they're all going to be eukaryotes. You don't deal with too many prokaryotes because, like I said, they are smaller, and we don't have microscopes here for me to show them to you. So for the most part, if you've seen it, it's probably a eukaryote. If you haven't seen it, prokaryote, that kind of thing. General rule. We're going to talk about some specific ones. I hope, probably, just to give you guys better examples. All right, so 13. Interesting. Alright, so they didn't really give you any examples of these, so I want you guys to have examples so that you can look them up. So here again, we're going to continue our page a little bit. I'm going to continue it up here. I'm going to put prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Alright. And I'm going to use some of the information from your mastery test because honestly, I'll admit this one, you could definitely get them right just by using the general differences. But I'm going to go ahead and help you guys out a little bit if you've watched all the way through this video because it's not included entirely. So you guys know the general differences, but I told you guys that simple bacteria, so things like lactobacillus, and this will show up on your mastery test. Lactobacillus is a prokaryote. All right, so lactobacillus, Lacto. All right, lactobacillus. I told you earlier that yeast was eukaryote. I actually don't remember if this one's on your mastery test, but that's okay. E. coli, I mentioned earlier, is this. Vibrero fishy, if I'm not mistaken. Again, I don't know if these actually show up on your mastery test, but I think some of them do. What are some others? I gave you guys like skin cells and whatnot. So you guys already saw some examples of eukaryotes, but these are the kind of things I know this one shows up on your mastery test, and lactobacillus, like I know because it's a very simple bacteria that it's a prokaryote and it's really hard to kill. So I know that. I don't really know how you're supposed to figure that out just by looking at it. I'm not really sure. But so yeah, yeast, things like you use in bread. They're bigger. They've got little clumps you can buy in bags. Those are gonna be eukaryotes. In any case, I'm gonna put both of these on full screen. That was all of this lecture. It's only 15 minutes long, so yeah, feel free to let me know if I can help you out with anything, guys. All right, so I think let me raise this a little bit. So there's one pretty full screen. You guys feel free to pause it. And there's the other. There you go. All right, guys. So let me know if you need any help. We're gonna cut this one short, and I'll see you guys next video. Good luck. Good luck.